People that talk bad about Bitcoin, Saylor, CEO of BlackRock, they surrender. They go from being enemies of Bitcoin or criticizing Bitcoin. Saylor himself, he was talking to join them. This is what Bitcoin is going to do. And this path is the path that all of us should desire and want, because over time, without creating crises, because all these people will talk about hyperinflation, the dollar losing all of a sudden value, etc. They don't realize how crazy these scenarios will be. They will be very dramatic. A lot of people will suffer hunger. Probably there will be unrest, not just in the United States, but all over the world. It will have to be such a dramatic event that will be, it's not just a black swan event, it will be really a deep, deep crisis, maybe even leading to things like the nuclear war, like I say. I know it sounds crazy, but it's possible that the United States, if it loses this control that it has right now through the dollar, it will provoke a war, right? It has done it before many times. It will create some kind of black flag event, and then, maybe attack, create some kind of a war. This is what people in power do when they are pushed against the wall. And this is why Bitcoin is such a powerful thing, because little by little is winning things. And there will be a point, and this is why I'm saying 20 years. Why I'm thinking 20 years, because Bitcoin in 20 years will be something on the order of a few $1 million. And by the time Bitcoin is a few $1 million, we are talking about the market cap of Bitcoin being on the order of hundreds of trillions of dollars. And that hundreds of trillions of dollars is kind of a critical point, because, if you take, for example, all the real estate of the world or all the money in the world, we're talking about 300, 400 trillion dollars. And if Bitcoin is in the order of magnitude, this is why the order of magnitudes are important. By the time we scale, and we are talking about only 2 orders of magnitude, right? We are talking, in fact, actually, to go to 1 million is only one order. To go to 10 million, that is, when we will get hundreds of trillions of dollars. And we need to go, actually, sorry, I say 1 million, but we need about $10 million. By the time Bitcoin is $10 million, it is something on the order of 25 years, 24, 25 years, according to the power law. It will take that time. The market cap will be on the order of hundreds of trillions of dollars. And now we are talking about being on the same order of magnitude than all the wealth on the earth. And so by the time we go there, nations will pay attention. We are not talking about, this strategic reserve that people think that right now, if it happens, it will be the first step in that direction. It will be like a little symbolic gesture, because, these strategic reserves are not much bigger than ETFs. I don't know why people will make a big deal. Now, symbolically, they are going to be a big deal, because it's the first step where nations start to think about Bitcoin in this strategic way, etc. But the big step will be when they adopt Bitcoin, when there will be the Bitcoin standard, when they decide to peg their currency to Bitcoin and say, listen, basically, and it will be, even there will be kind of a way of going around and not saying, oh, we are going to use Bitcoin as our currency, we are pegging it, right? But it's going to be the same. It's just not losing face and say, we're still going to use the dollar, but will be pegged to Bitcoin. That event is going to take time to happen, because we need the infrastructure, we need the law. This is also part of what the Bitcoin is about. It's all about giving time, briefing time, because this is why it's slowing down. This is why we have a diminishing return. We cannot do what Bitcoin was doing when it was $20. We need more time for all these things to take place. And so the power law allows for that, because this is exactly this idea of scaling. As the system becomes bigger and bigger, it takes more time to grow, because that's how these natural things and cities, etc., work. You need time to go to the next step, to go to the next order of magnitude, because you are dealing with something that is now, $20 trillion and not few $1 million when it was, when Bitcoin was worth it a cent. It cannot be. It cannot be this constant exponential growth. This is why Bitcoin is not an exponential. It has to be something that is graded like this, right? That is slowing down. It's not slowing down in a scale point of view. If you look at scale, if you focus only on scale, scale stays constant, right? The proportion between the scale of price and the scale of time stay
And
constant.
linear,
That is,
it just goes through the
it
through
goes
the roof.
it goes up, but that is if you're thinking in scales, right? From a scale point of view, nothing changes. It's the same scaling. But from a human point of view, because humans are not used to think unless you're trained, this is why I want more people to read that book, Scale. It takes time. Even me, it takes time to start to think in this way of scales. If you're thinking in terms of scale, nothing changes. If you're thinking in human terms, because we live linear times, we live, this is how we evolve over time. Now, maybe a mountain, if a mountain was a living being, maybe mountains thinks in log time instead of linear time, right? If we were beings that lived thousands or maybe even millions of years, maybe we acquired a different way of thinking about time, of feeling about time. But right now we are linear, so we need a translation, right? And that translation, it looks bad for some people because they want everything now, right? But one of the beautiful things, right, for example, in the book, the Bitcoin Stand, there is this idea of a preference time, right? Bitcoin teaches us about having a slow preference time, that just give it its time, right? It's still pretty fast because we're not talking about 100 years. We are talking about 20 years, right? In 20 years, for a currency to go from an asset to go from 100,000 to 10 million seems crazy, right? One Bitcoin, $10 million. Can you imagine when in the beginning was, like the first transaction, how much Bitcoin you could buy with $1 when there was the first transaction? 5,000. So the first USD to Bitcoin transaction that happened in 2010, it was $1 for 5,000. $1 for 5,000 Bitcoin. This was even before the pizza. It was actually one of the collaborators of Satoshi. They created, they wanted to show that actually people could transact Bitcoin for dollars, that it was not just a video game, there was something serious that you could use it as a real currency. And so they created this exchange. It was like an improvised exchange where you will send to this guy. He was doing it. He had a bunch of Bitcoin that he was mining, or Satoshi was sending to him, and he put he created this website where you could go and buy from him. Mostly, you will send him PayPal, and he will send you Bitcoin. And the first time this ever happened, it was $1 for 5,000 Bitcoin. Can you imagine? And one day it will be $10 million. Can you imagine? This is crazy. It's like science fiction. Like if you wrote a book 20 years ago explaining that there was such a thing, people will have laughed and say, what are you talking about? Something that goes from, in 15 years, in 20 years, in 30. It's ridiculous, right? It never happened in the history of mankind, such a thing. There is no any type of thing that people value. We went from just few cents all the way to millions of dollars in a small amount of time. Nothing. And so this is why we need a different way of thinking, and the scaling approach is the right way of thinking, because Bitcoin has behaved in this way. And the fact that there are all these other things around us, like cities, for example, right? Cities probably is the best example because, it's a human phenomenon. Many people sometimes dismiss the power law because they say, well, okay, maybe power law work for planets, we work for organisms, but for sure don't work for human beings. Well, it turns out a lot of things we do are like that. City is one example. There are also sometimes some people challenge me about history. They told me, oh, history is not a power law. And it took me literally 5 minutes to find, for example, that the time in between wars is a power law. And, it's an historical event. Wars are one of the things that change history a lot. But we could find other things that I'm pretty sure over time in the history of mankind follow power laws. There are very precise reasons why these things happen. It's about mechanism. In physics, we are very interested about what are the causes, how things happen. And power law are all about interactions between agents and links, right? Networks and things that multiply. So if you have things that two people interact in each other, is not their effect is not like if let's say there are 4 people, right? The effect is not 4, is actually 16 because it goes up with the square or some kind of a power, right? It's a multiplicative effect. It's not an additive effect. Things we a little change create a huge big change. A little change in time here, for example, creates a big change in price. So this is the story of Bitcoin. So to go back to the inflation stuff, right? My vision is that the US dollar will stay stable, and the reason is exactly the reason that I was describing, because the consequences of that will be so big that even if we go in that direction, there will be forces that keep it stable. Like the other countries will come together and will do things, will take action. Even enemies like Russia, Russia doesn't want the United States to be completely destroyed, right? And because when things like that happen, or China doesn't want, right? Because they are still working together. They are
Right.
Partners in commerce, etc. Yeah, yes, you want to compete, but you don't want the other completely to disappear, because it will not be good for the yeah, exactly. For the global economy will not be good, and they are too much interconnected. It's different from other time in history where yes, there was some commerce, there was some communication, but there was a lot of exactly. And in general, it's more like, as much as we want to put boundaries around our countries, it's really like one big, huge global thing, right? Mm-hmm. And sure, I know that some people don't like the idea of the Earth being global, right? Because anything if you push, if you're pushing any idea too much in any direction, it can always be bad, right? Yep. If you're making too much globals and you don't give a chance for the local economy to grow, etc., that can be bad. So the globalists, right, the evil globalists, is silly, because yes, if you push an agenda too far, anything, right, even a good thing, can be bad. But in general, the world is like that. Everything is interconnected, and the dollar has a central role until Bitcoin will take over. And so we want a smooth transition. We want these to be smooth for the next 20, 25 years. It will be still painful because the inflation will continue to go up, will continue to create more and more debt, but we can tolerate pain. We try to minimize. And then give Bitcoin the chance to win without any crisis. It will win by itself. And so that is my vision. But I think it will not happen because of how the dollar works, how the global economy works. Do I have a proof? Do I have a mathematical way of showing that? No. It's mostly intuition, it's mostly reasoning. And, this is one of the things that many times I try to avoid because I want to support everything with data. Now, I could do a deeper study to show that it's very unlikely that it happens, but I agree with that. It's mostly speculation. My intuition tells me it cannot happen. It will not happen. And it's a good thing that it doesn't happen. In fact, this is what we want. What people, sometimes I hear this expression, right? Oh, it's like a band-aid that we want to reap because, yes, we can have a lot of pain, but over a short amount of time, and then it's over. No, it's not going to be like that. It's like you're cutting your arm off, you're cutting your leg off if the dollar inflates, and it will be dramatic. It will be something that, if it happens, but I don't think it happens, it will not be like a band-aid. It will not be like a little flesh wounds. It will be literally cutting off your arms or even your legs. It's going to be a big deal, and many people will suffer, and it's possible that will even lead to a nuclear war. I'm serious about that. So it's not something that people should talk about almost like in a wishful thinking way, right? Like, oh, we want that to happen. Now, we should be prepared to everything, but I'm not sure you can be prepared for something like that, right? Actually, Bitcoin is a stabilizing effect because more and more, instead of people becoming depraved and say, okay, let's, carpe diem, right? Let's let's live a day. Let's spend everything we have. In any way, the dollar is losing value, because in fact, part of the reason why we do that is because we want you to spend a lot of money all the time and not save anything, right? But because of Bitcoin, people start to save. They consider even fun. It's a fun exercise to save and think about your future. And that is some of the things that our grandfathers were doing. We were putting Italy, for example, is very famous for that. It's a country where everybody saves money, because it's kind of comes from the agricultural mindset, right? The agricultural cultures. They want to save, right, for bad times, right? They need to create granary. They need to put things aside because one year they harvested bad, the other one is good. So you want to keep, a reserve of your resources. And that is a new way of thinking, that is spreading between new people, young people. They are motivated to save because of Bitcoin, etc. And I think over the long period of time, if Bitcoin absorbed more and more of the wealth of the world, we became a stabilizing effect. So that is probably maybe something that can be even modeled. That given that a lot of assets are moving towards Bitcoin, the impact of inflation is going to be less and less overall. And so I don't think we go there, and I hope that we don't go there. So that is my comments about what you were saying about hyperinflation and things like that.
Bitcoin's the only finite thing we have. Besides our time, it's the only finite thing we've really ever discovered as human beings. So how does that change? How does it affect the power law or change the power law? Like, at some point there could be, theoretically, there's no Bitcoin on exchanges anymore. And everyone's saying, hey, I'm not giving it up. How does the power law account for that with this thing where we found where it's truly finite?
If you want the answer to that question right there and you like that spicy clip, check it out here. Come on, we'll see you in there. But if you want the full interview in its entirety, all the spicy clips put together, and you're not going to want to miss it, believe me, then check that out here. Come on, we'll see you in there. Do it.